It's October, and that means Halloween, a time of fantastical horror when the worst creatures of the human imagination rise from their night-black lairs to spread terror and destruction until one of them is elected president. It's typical at this time of year to recommend some spooky entertainments to help you set the eerie mood for the big night when we all head to the voting booth to demand we be given some free treats lest we throw toilet paper over the White House. Although it's hard to imagine how we'll ever find enough toilet paper to clean up what's going to be coming out of the White House for the next 4 years. So here's a selection of delightfully chilling movies that will turn your thoughts to mayhem and death and take your mind off the really bad stuff that's happening on the political scene. First, you'll want to view The Exorcist Part 7. This is the story of a female Democrat presidential candidate who's possessed by a demon such that her face becomes a scarred and terrible mask of hellish torment while her head and her political positions spin around in unnatural directions until she vomits green slime and impossible promises over everyone around her. Finally, a priest who has lost his faith is called in to deal with the nightmare. But bizarrely, the priest takes one look at this soulless wreck of a human being and says there's absolutely nothing wrong with her, then returns to his day job as editor of the New York Times. At last, the possessed politician becomes so twisted around that her head is actually planted between her buttocks. Then she's elected president. Next, you'll want to see Psycho 4, the story of a female Democrat presidential candidate who dies of old age and is then stuffed and carted from campaign event to campaign event where her handlers move her body around and her top aide and necrophiliac lesbian lover imitates her voice to make people think she's still alive. In the horrific climax, the dead woman goes on a vengeful rampage, destroying everyone and everything around her. Then she's elected president. And of course, you don't want to neglect the classics, so make sure to watch Bride of Frankenstein Returns. This is the story of a former president so desperate to return to office that he hires a mad scientist to build him a wife out of the mutilated, blood-soaked limbs and organs of dead ideas. When the hideous construction is done, the female creature is run up through the castle battlements in a lightning storm until a jolt of electricity transforms her into a bizarre simulation of a living being. Ultimately, the poor monster takes one look at herself in the mirror and screams in endless horror at the corrupt and empty beast she is. Then she's elected president. Those are just a few of the horror movies you can watch this month that will help prepare your mind for that scariest of all nights when disgusting and horrid monstrosities like vampires, witches, and Donald Trump roam the earth until, in a final crescendo of unimaginable abomination, but I don't want to give away the ending. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped, ipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray!
Life is hunky-dunky when you think about it, you know? It's actually a philosophical position. Well, you know, the Klavanless weekend has passed, and probably the worst thing that happened, you know, aside from the country falling apart and all that stuff, Vin Scully retired, the L.A. Dodgers announcer for 67 years, and Andrew Breitbart's possibly his greatest hero. I mean, Andrew Breitbart loved this guy. He had heroic fantasies of like making movies about Vin Scully. He just loved him. And one of the reasons he loved him is because he was a conservative. He was a genuine conservative. Here is just 20 seconds of Vin Scully announcing between pitches, this is between pitches, right, to a batter from Venezuela. And he says, what's it like to be this guy and read about how Venezuela is going down the drain? And then he says this.
Socialism failing to work as it always does, this time in Venezuela. You talk about giving everybody something free and all of a sudden there's no food to eat. And who do you think is the richest person in Venezuela? The daughter of Hugo Chavez. Hello. Anyway, 0-2. Socialism failing to work.
0-2. It's like more truth between pitches than Obama has said in the last 8 years. So Vin Scully, truly one of the great broadcasters of all time, he retired. And all right, we're going to be talking a lot of culture today. Oh, and it's the Jewish New Year. So Happy New Year to Jewish people. Shapiro's not coming in today, right?
No.
See, this is the problem with the alt-right. They hate the Jews, but they can't explain how these people have taken over the world and they never come to work. It's like every other day it's a holiday. They take over the world in their spare time. It's like so why then are the white races superior? I can't understand the whole philosophy. Never mind. All right, so we're going to talk a lot of culture today. We are in the process of building a satellite so we can bring in our cultural reporter Michael Knowles from the writers' room 25 feet away. We have to bounce the signal off the planet Neptune before we can actually go to Knowles, and it doesn't always work, but if we can, we'll have him in. That will come after you lose our video feed on Facebook and YouTube. You have us here for 15 minutes, and then you are cast into the exterior darkness where there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. But you can come to the Daily Wire and hear the rest there, or you can download us from iTunes or SoundCloud. If you want the whole thing in video live on the Daily Wire, come to the Daily Wire and subscribe. It's free for 30 days and only a lousy $8 after that. I mean, come on. All right, and I will plugging myself is one of my least favorite things. I hate doing it. I always forget to do it, but I'm going to do it for a couple more days to ask you to go out and get The Great Good Thing, my memoir, The Great Good Thing, A Secular Jew Comes to Faith in Christ. People are writing me every day telling me that this has really moved them, and some of them saying it has changed their lives. And that, too, is just a couple of bucks, and you get your life changed. And look, let's face it, your life needs changing. I mean, you'd be doing something more important than listening to this, right? I mean, all right. So everyone is going insane. This election is now coming into its kind of the home stretch, and everyone is going out of their mind. We talked last week about Donald Trump flipping out over this Miss Universe. First she was Miss Venezuela, then she was Miss Universe, then she was Miss Piggy. She was the Miss Universe who ate too much, and he's still tweeting about it. Like 3 a.m, he's tweeting about her. But in the aftermath of this, what everybody says was a victory for Hillary Clinton in the first debate. And let's not forget, that Mitt Romney destroyed Barack Obama in the first debate. So the first debate is only the first debate. And she seems like she's getting there weren't any really new scientific polls over the weekend. It seems like she's getting a bit of a bump. It was not only the debate, it was the way he reacted by going nuts about this thing. But now the other side is going crazy. The New York Times is going out of their mind. They are going out of their mind. Last week, I think it was Thursday, I read an old New York Times article about how Hillary Clinton maligned the people that Bill Clinton abused, the women that Bill Clinton abused. So while they're attacking Donald Trump for maligning this Miss Universe, in fact, Hillary Clinton targeted and attacked and organized these horrible, horrible attempts to discredit the women who Bill Clinton assaulted, essentially. I mean, he assaulted, he abused them. One of them says he raped her, and it's their fault. Hillary Clinton makes it their fault. The New York Times went out and rewrote that article today. It is virtually the same article, except now it is restyled to let supporters know how to spin this in a good way. How Hillary Clinton, this is the headline, how Hillary Clinton grappled with Bill Clinton's infidelity and his accusers. How this poor, poor woman, who's just like you or me, folks, just like every woman when her husband steps out. Donald J. Trump, it says, the Republican presidential nominee, criticized Mrs. Clinton over Mr. Clinton's affairs and her response to them, and said he might talk more about the issue in the final weeks before the election. That could be a treacherous strategy for Mr. Trump, given his own past infidelity and questionable treatment of women. He didn't go out and torture these poor women. The women slept with him. That's like none of my business, All right, but many voters, particularly women, might see Mrs. Clinton being blamed for her husband's conduct. I love it when the New York Times advises Republicans on how they should lose the election, It could also remind voters of a searing period in American history and in Mrs. Clinton's life. Oh, boo-hoo. I mean, come on. Confronting a spouse's unfaithfulness is painful under any circumstances. For Mrs. Clinton, it happened repeatedly and in the most public of ways. They're trying to reclaim that burst of sympathy she got for being cheated on while she was trying to destroy these women, as they not only reported then, they report now in this article again. They tell the same story. They just twist it. It's all written like that. And then they've got this tax story. Now, I may be alone in this. All I'm trying to do, I have no dog in this fight. I really don't. I mean, like I said, I'm viscerally rooting for Donald Trump because I hate the elites and I hate the media so much. But these are two awful people. I'm not going to, whitewash that. I don't, the next 4 years, we're going to have a bad president. That's what's going to happen. We're going to have a bad president. But I may be alone in saying this, but the New York Times got somebody mailed them 3 pages of Trump's 1995 tax returns. So we're now talking about 20 years ago. These are 21 years ago. This is how they write the story. How Donald Trump turned the tax code into a giant tax shelter. So just think about that for a minute, how he turned the tax code into a giant tax shelter. He used the tax code, right? Doesn't say he broke the law. He didn't break the law. They say it. Says, and now here's how this one is written. You got to love these guys. So this used to be a newspaper. I swear. Within my memory, this was once a newspaper. New York Times, former newspaper. Now it is this trash. Listen to this. Now we know. Okay, so here it comes, folks. Donald J. Trump racked up losses so huge in the early 1990s that he wouldn't have had to pay federal or New York state income tax on nearly $1 billion in income. What? So he racked up losses, he got to deduct them, right? None of this seems to have made the slightest dent in Mr. Trump's opulent lifestyle over the years. It's hard to imagine a starker contrast with the vast number of Americans who struggle to both pay taxes and make ends meet, or a more damning indictment of a tax code that makes this possible. Mr. Trump's pattern of generating losses and using them to offset other income, it's like it's a criminal. That's how the tax code works. If you make a loss, if you're a businessman, you can deduct your losses from your taxes. It's obvious. It says if this continued, as seems likely, it's obvious why he has not released his tax returns, not because he's being audited or because the returns are too complicated, but because he hasn't paid any taxes. They don't even know this. They don't know this. All they're talking about is there is a law that he lost like $1 billion because his casinos went bust, okay? If a businessman takes a loss, he can prorate that loss over the next several years. So if you lose $1 billion, you can take that off your taxes. By the way, this law, which has been in place since 1916, I think it is, has been added to by Democrats and Republicans over the years because it helps businessmen who are in seasonal businesses like real estate. You know, these are businesses that go up and down. You have big ups, you get big downs. You have to be able to deduct your losses or you go out of business. You go out of business, guess what? All the people who work for Donald Trump are unemployed. You know, to me, this is a non-story. But here's how McCaskill, this is Senator Claire McCaskill speaking for Hillary Clinton. Here's their spin.
Well, if you look at the way Donald Trump has conducted business, he crashes businesses into bankruptcy, leaving scores of businesses unpaid, people really hurting with the losses his companies have suffered. But he walks away unscathed, and it appears he walks away with a golden ticket that allows him under the tax code to avoid taxes for decades. I think that the key here is, how is he going to fix it? Well, look at his tax plan. Guess who his tax plan benefits? Billionaires. His tax plan benefits Donald Trump. That should be no surprise to anyone, since that is the way he sees the world. He doesn't care about those small businesses he didn't pay. He doesn't care about the people who lost millions of dollars in all of his bankruptcies. He cares about Donald.
So here's the Trump spin from Rudy Giuliani.
This is perfectly legal. And the Times makes that point about 26 paragraphs into the opinion. Number two, the Times fails to point out that he has an obligation as the head of a business to take advantage of and to use the lawful deductions and tax advantages that are available to you. I advise my clients to do that because if they don't do it, they get sued by their co-investors, by their investors. They lose jobs for their employees. Mm-hmm. And the reality is this is rather common in large, gigantic American businesses, loss carry-forwards.
But
you might remember a few years ago it was pointed out that GE paid no taxes.
Yeah.
So the reality is this is part of our tax code. The man's a genius. He knows how to operate the tax code for the benefit of the people he's serving.
Well, that's interesting.
Okay, now all I want to say is this. I'm not making any excuses for Donald Trump. The way Donald Trump has behaved over the last week make me think there's something really wrong with the guy. That he can't stop in a presidential race, tweeting at 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, tweeting about some Miss Universe thing that happened 20 years ago. That is not a strategy. That's a symptom. That is a symptom of narcissistic personality disorder. Hillary Clinton was advised by psychologists or psychiatrists in her debate prep. She baited him. She went after him. Narcissists can't stand to be criticized. They have to set the record straight, and that's what he's doing. But, and I will finish that sentence in just a minute, but first I have to say goodbye to our friends on Facebook and YouTube. Come over to the Daily Wire, and here it comes after the but, and Michael Knowles will be here.